Hello everybody, today I'm talking about the different foreign language schools that you can teach in China with if you have a TEFL degree. Well, the schools are broken down into three different categories. The first one being training centers, second kindergartens, and the third one's primary schools, high schools, and universities. Now, those are different places, but they operate in the same manner, so you can put them into the same category. You also get international schools, but for those you need to be a qualified teacher to work at. Now I'm going to start off with training centers, which is the first school that I worked at. I worked at a training center for a year, and it was a bit of a culture shock getting there, but the nice thing about training centers is that you get exposed to lots of different other places. So how training centers works is these are the places that Chinese children go and get lessons after school. It's very common in China for children to go to school for about 16 hours a day. So they will go to a training center to get this done. Training centers, usually their biggest departments are maths and English, and you obviously work in the English departments. Your working hours can vary, so some training centers will have classes in the evenings, so some people only start work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they'll work sometimes till 9 o'clock at night. You're definitely working on weekends, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. Then your days off are during the week. So for me, my days off were Thursdays and Fridays. At my old training center, I did not have training center classes during the week. I worked at different schools. So what my training center company would do is they would rent me out to different schools during the week. So on Monday and Tuesday, I would work at a kindergarten, and then on Wednesday I would say work at a kindergarten in the morning and a primary school in the afternoon, and then you would just give lessons to those individual children. Now the problem with these training centers is you don't get much satisfaction out of your job because it's very much on a basis of satisfying the parents. So you're pretty much just paid to go in there and speak English. There's nobody really evaluating your performance, especially during the week when you're at primary schools and kindergartens and not training center classes. And then during the training center classes, you go and you teach in the training centers, which are owned by the schools. But there's this big balance between what your boss tells you to do and then what the Chinese teacher in there, she's the one who's paid for the performance. So when you work at the training center, she wants you to perform in a certain way, and she also gets feedback from the parents and stuff like that. So training centers are a bit of a juggling game. The pros of a training center are that you can usually ask for extra hours and work a little bit more. I've got friends that'll work 35 hours a week, and they'll get paid more for it. And this happens because you only get weekdays off. The class sizes are usually smaller, and you do get to see a lot of your city and travel around a lot more, which is nice if you want that sort of thing. The cons with training centers is sometimes you spend so much time traveling. So at my old city, one of the things that bugged me was that I would only have 20 hours per week that I was paid for. But what's not factored into your pay is the amount of time that you spend traveling to all of these different schools. So I would have a class in the morning and a class in the afternoon, and a 3-hour gap during lunchtime where they say you can do whatever you want. But there was 15 minutes for lunch, and then there was still an hour and a half for me to get to this new school that I need to go to every time, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, which is not factored in. And then also you teach at so many different places, you can't really develop a relationship with the children and evaluate them on an ongoing basis. You pretty much just walk in there with the class. If they pick it up, if they remembered it, that's up to them. The second one I want to look at is kindergartens. Now, I've just started working at a kindergarten now. Now, there's a big thing between training centers and kindergartens and primary schools, okay? Primary schools and high schools and universities need a certificate for a foreigner to work there, okay? Whereas kindergartens don't need a special certificate for a foreigner to work there. So it's easier for them to get certification for a foreigner to work there, which is why there are a lot more kindergarten jobs available for foreigners to work at. Now, working at kindergartens, you've got two different options and that you can work at the kindergarten. One being that you're stuck with the same class. So all Chinese kindergartens work in the same way. They have a maximum of 25 children per class. They have certain procedures that they need to follow, which is actually set out by the Chinese government. And within the first method, there's always a 4-man team in the class. Okay, one being a teacher, one being a child behavioral expert, the one being like more of a maid to the class, and then I don't know what the last person is. The first one is that you form part of that 4-man team, which is what I'm doing now, which is actually quite nice in a sense because you can help your children build and grow, and you help them throughout their daily procedure and you teach them English along the way. So you form part of that class, that is your class, you work with them the whole time. The second manner in which you can work at a kindergarten, which I've got some friends doing, is you're the foreign teacher for the school. So you'll be one foreign teacher and then you're teaching all day. In the morning you'll teach like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and then you'll have the classes throughout the day and you're teaching most of the day. Whereas with what I'm doing, teaching the same children all day, every day, I actually don't teach very much. I teach for 15 minutes 3 times a week, but works a little bit better because then I get to, I can be more focused and focus on like what my children are learning, what they're picking up, what I can do with them further. Whereas if you're teaching, different classes throughout the day, it's kind of hard to figure out who's at what level and make sure that everybody's progressing at a really good rate. The salaries for these two different systems are pretty much the same. The only difference is the working hours, but at the schools where they want you to teach classes throughout the day at kindergartens, it's a little bit difficult to gauge who's doing what, and you often get stupid requests. So you'll ask them, what do you want the children to learn? And I've heard examples of people saying that, their school told them that they want to teach kindergartens about old Shanghai, post-war torn Shanghai and what it was like back then, which these kids are struggling to grasp, say the word yellow properly, and you want to teach them about, the history of their country in a different language. So my experience teaching at primary schools and middle schools. The first thing I'll have to say is, okay, you do get weekends off. You usually work at these places through training centers. When you work directly for these places, the one thing you'll instantly realize is that the classes are a lot more misbehaved. Okay, so like I said, in kindergartens, you have that 4-man team. In a high school, the class sizes are usually between 60 to 80 students cramped into a very small room. And between grade 1 and grade 5, they're really badly behaved. So it'll be you and a Chinese assistant trying to control 80 children. Sometimes, most of the time, the children understand very little of what you're saying, and it makes them very different to control them. I've had students stand up and start fighting with each other. I had a child sit on a fire extinguisher once accidentally and blow smoke all over the room. Primary schools and high schools and universities are fine, but anything between that grade 1 to grade 5 level is very difficult to control. As far as I understand, you have a standard working thing, so you'll work about 6 hours per day. The hours that you work will vary depending on where your classes are, so it'll be very similar to you working at a full-time kindergarten. From what I've heard, the salaries working at middle schools, primary schools, universities are a lot lower than your kindergarten and training center levels. But a lot of people do it because they want to live in a certain place, or they do tend to find a bit of a better job. Usually they'll have you teaching 3 different grades at the same time, which is okay, and most times out of 10 you will only get primary school, middle school, university jobs if you get it through an agent. You're effectively employed by the agent, and then the agent rents you out to the schools. But the problem with this is where the salary cut comes in, is that the agent gets paid through basically your rental fee. So in actual fact, you should be getting paid a lot more, and another guy's getting paid for your thing. So I seriously wouldn't recommend doing something like this. And the other thing is that it's kind of hard to complain because you don't know who to complain to. So you complain to your agent, and your agent said, no, you must deal with the school with that, and you complain to the school, and then the school says you must talk to your agent. And it's a bit of a scam. I wouldn't recommend primary schools, middle schools. Just in the way that they operate, you usually work a lot harder for less money. Now for the most important part, what do I think you should do? Having worked here for a year, I have friends that have been working for 15 years, 4 years, 6 years, and you know, all different places. I've got friends in Beijing, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Foshan. What I recommend that you do on your first year working in China, if you're looking to come here, go and work at a training center, but a big one. My old training center employed between, I think it was like 2,000-3,000 people. The foreign department was very small, but what it did was it exposed me to lots of different foreigners who've been working in lots of different places, and you hear all the stories from them. And then on top of that, you can expose yourself to all of the different places. So in my first year, I worked at kindergartens, I worked at primary schools, I worked at high schools. I did one-off gigs, you know, where I went to Handan and spoke in front of like 200, 400 students at once. You'll get to do one-on-one classes with children, with high school students. I got to teach the Chinese teachers culture lessons as well. I got to teach them English lessons. So you get exposed to all of the different ways that the teaching, like foreign language expert scenario runs here in China. So I would recommend go doing that, and then from there seeing what you like. Once you've figured out the culture, decide where you want to go after that. You know, if you don't like, you know, a very Chinese city, you want something a bit bigger, you know, with more foreign things, you can move to a city that will, you know, have a job for you like that. Or, you know, if you want it to be a little bit more rural, you can find a school in a more rural city. But a training center allows you to see a lot of the city, and it exposes you to all of the different scenarios that you could go and work at. So guys, that's my video on, you know, what I've experienced, what I've learned, what people have told me. At the end of this video, I'm going to put a little link to a video made by Snarky Guy. I actually got lucky enough to meet him in person here in Shanghai the other day. And he made a video about what it's like to work at a kindergarten. The one that I'm busy working at right now is nothing like the experience that he described, but the video that he's posted is probably the most honest and accurate representation of 90% of the kindergartens that other people that I know of have worked at. So definitely take a look at that, and please drop in the comment section below that Matthew Mackay sent him. But yeah guys, if you've got any other questions about it, I'm going to make more videos about, you know, my 1 year at a training center, and then how it's going at a kindergarten over here so far, a little bit more direct, you know, explaining. For people that want more details, I'll tell you some of the good stories, some of the bad stories, but this was just a general outline of. But yeah guys, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and comment down below. And remember, if you're stuck in a rut, try something new, fix something old, change something now. Cheers, bye.